Welcome to another Gran Turismo Sport tutorial. This time around we have shifter carts at Brands Hatch Indy. And even though I didn't do this race in the qualifying board itself, I mean the replay's proof that I did it, I'm not lying or anything. It's here, y'all can see it. I did this lap in the race with no draft, so in theory it should be able to be done in qualifying as well. I just happened to not because, well, the first and most important thing about carts, I'll go ahead and start this off with because it's needed to be known to be able to go from there, is carts are extremely inconsistent. If I would have done this lap on the qualifying board, I think it would have put me third in the Americas region. So top 10-ish in the world. I wreck about 50% of the time. But in carts, as long as you don't spin out, a wreck's not that big a deal, or at least in this game. I don't know why, but carts don't seem to lose much speed when they go on the grass or even go on the sand. If you go on the sand for about 3 or 4 seconds in the cart, you go from about 90 something to 70 something. In most cars, you would go, if you're going about 90 into the sand, you'd be going about 30. So it's not that big a deal if you wreck, but it's still obviously best if you don't. So I'll go and show the best lap I was able to do here. Easier said than done, honestly. My average lap is probably not even a 47. It's probably a 48, 2 or 3 or something like that. But there's not much that can be done. And supposedly it's even harder with a steering wheel. The one time where a controller actually has an advantage over a steering wheel is with vehicles that are barely used, but anyway, let's get into it. To start off, for how to run this course, even though I've sold this course a lot, in order to run over kart, it's completely different. It doesn't matter that much that I'm actually all that good here, because it's completely different in a kart. Don't try to run this like a car, no matter how well you know this course, that's for sure. And it even starts at the turn into your best lap. With a car, you can sort of change around stuff to run different angles to be able to carry more speed. Just take wider line, blah blah blah. In a kart, you're kind of sort of set to what line you take. There's one line that's best in a kart, and then kind of all else will either be a wreck or way slower. This is how it is. So, anyway, that line is pretty much as follows. No matter if it's going to your best lap or on your best lap. Midway through the turn or so, start trail braking gradually. Trail braking is pretty much just tap the brake, turn a little bit, tap the brake, turn a little bit. Good thing about carts are they are light, they turn really well. You can go from 90 to 70 pretty easily in a cart. This is actually one of the easier turns. The hard part about the turn is kind of the getting off it. In order to do the turn itself, start slowing down a bit midway through, and by the time you're at the end of it, be around 70 or so. You want to be in 5th gear to get the most traction possible. Also, I know this is kind of iffy, and it probably does slow me down very slightly, but not much, and it definitely makes me way more consistent than it slows me down. I have traction control on 5. I don't know if y'all can hear this on the video, but I hear screaming in the background. I know, it's angering. I also have counter steering on strong. Y'all might start being able to hear stuff at this point. I don't have ASM on though. Active stability management is off for this. Everything else goes on to the absolute max. That's about the only way you can drive a kart consistently in this game. In GT6, I was in the GT Planet karting series where everything was off. I wrecked about as much in 6 as I did in this game with everything on. I was actually faster in this game than I was at 6, so take that as you may. Anyway, moving on. Carts are unstable. Remember that. The hard part about getting off this turn, even with maximum traction control and counter steering on, your car wants to slide. It's not too bad in 5th gear. If you use 4th gear though, then I salute you, you're braver than me. In theory, you are going to get a bit more speed because this revs best in the high RPMs, but in reality, you're probably just going to spin out. So I recommend not risking it. The top time in the world is a .4, and that's with the E rated driver, so I'm gonna just take a wild guess and say that's a grip glitch. I don't know that for a fact. It's harder to see in a kart because there's not that much slowing down on a kart to begin with. But well, that driver has like 72 miles total in the game. I have 10,000. Take that as you may again, but yeah, moving on. To the first actual turn of the best lap, full throttle. It's actually not that hard to stay full throttle. What's hard is not getting it to slide, even with everything on. Sliding, you lose speed, you can still stay full throttle. The traction control will keep you from spinning out, unless you hit the sand. Like I said, in a car, you don't lose that much speed in the sand. But if you get like one tire in the sand, you might spin. If you get 4 tires in the sand, you actually won't, but you're going to lose about 30 miles an hour. So again, just don't go in the sand if you can avoid it. Also, avoid sliding if you can. The best way I've found to avoid sliding is a lot of luck. I know that sounds kind of not helpful, but even in the race, I did this turn good about 50% of the time. And this is during the race. I mean, just look at the laps. It's not the most consistent, and I'm way ahead in this race. 49-2, 48-6, 48-1, 48-1, 48-3, and then this is a 47-7. I had 2 laps in a row that were consistent, and then the rest were all within, what, a second and a half gap or something like that, a 49-2 to 47-7. So yeah, I'm leading this race in the high split of the time, and I can't even run within a second and a half all that consistently. So if you go off, no big deal. But if you do it perfect, the best way that I've found to do it perfect is get as close to that as possible without hitting it, that being the like apex rumble strip there. Any rumble strip in a kart, if you're turning, don't hit it at all. Never, ever, no matter what's on, even if you have ASM on, which will slow you down, you're still probably gonna wreck. Don't ever hit a rumble strip in a kart while turning. That's probably in real life too. Don't ever do it. Ever. Okay, moving on. To avoid the slide, this is the important part here. In general, for most turns in a kart, you don't want to turn it all that much. Probably never over 70 or so percent pushing the joystick one way or the other. If you're on a wheel, I guess it's 70% of the degrees. I don't know, I've never used a wheel. This, it's about 40%. Seriously. Which is a lot easier said than done for getting off the turn. Because this turn you almost have to slow down for, but you don't quite. So if you try to turn at about 50% to be able to get to that apex, you might get there, you might get a good line, but you'll probably slide. So this is a really, really inconsistent turn that needs a lot of practice. If you go under 40%, you're probably going to go in the sand. Again, you might not spin, but you're going to lose speed. If you go 50%, you probably won't spin, but you will lose speed. So it's kind of... there's not much margin for error at all for that turn. That's the least margin for error of any turn on the track. If you happen to do it, though, you're carrying about 97 at the apex, 99 sort of when the turn ends, and then by the time you're on the straight completely, about 101. If you're going 91, 92 or whatever, that's about the average, because that means you slid a bit, but again, that's about the average, even for me. If you're going 97, 98, you're gonna be on a heck of a heap of a lap if you don't spin out from here on out. There's not that many people can do that. For the next turn, though, this turn is not actually all that hard. Because, this is the only turn that it kind of correlates to cars. There's a few ways that you can actually do it. I go for this kind of complete slowdown approach. Again, not too much turning, but you can just hit the brakes completely and you're still good. Brakes on a kart, good because it's light. Turning on a kart, bad because it's light. It's just really finicky, but the brakes are really good. Slow down completely. You go from 90 to 60 after that settle to before even the turn. That's really cotton picking quick, especially when you're turning into it anyway. Good brakes. Bad, not really handling, but stability while handling. But anyway, naturally you're going to be in a lower gear for this turn. Fourth is good. Just stay in fourth, automatic or manual, it's already there anyway. You still get good power off, but the only hard part about this turn, sorta kinda, is mid-turn, just be brave. You can carry 57, 58 if you're that close to this or not. If you're not as close, then you're probably going to get a more speed out, but then like any other car, kart or not, you just lose the speed in terms of you use more track. It's kind of the traditional line is best. Use as least track as possible, but again, karts are inconsistent. This turn is relatively easy. Even if you are pretty far from the apex, it's not going to kill your lap all that much. This turn, though, we're sort of kill your lap. Again, karts aren't that consistent. You're not going to carry tons of speed every time. But it's easy. This is probably the easiest turn in the track to go to grass. Again, you don't lose too much speed going into grass with kart. If you go in the grass, you don't really actually lose any speed. You just don't really accelerate. Not that big a deal if you do it a few times a race. I did it probably 4 times this race. But if you don't want to get in the grass, this is also honestly going to be some luck. But the only thing that I can say definitively is do not hit that at all. If you hit that, you're probably going to spin out. Don't ever hit rumble strips while turning in a kart, ever. As I said before, but that's a good point to keep on emphasizing. Don't ever hit rumble strips. But anyway, if you avoid that, this is where it gets iffy because you're not really turning here. You are kind of going forward by this point, but it's still a kart, so it's gonna, well, y'all saw that, right? It bounced. Yeah, that bounce is very iffy. I bounced, and it can go 85 through there. I've actually gotten slightly faster like once. I bounced and I've got 79 through there. No matter what, you're going to bounce. You actually do want to hit that rumble strip, because about the only way to avoid that rumble strip, you're going at 78, 77, which is slower than even with a bounce. So, you're going to bounce, but it's going to be faster than not hitting it. The bounce is pretty random, though. There's not much more I can say about that. Moving on to the next turn. This is the easiest part of the track. Don't use the rumble strip, you are turning, but full throttle, not hard. Easy bit, full throttle, get close to the rumble strip, don't hit it. And then you're sort of back to how I've already told you to do it before, because there's no difference really in a kart lap into your best lap or the best lap itself. But to reiterate, start slowing down a bit midway through. I'll try my best to slow it here, but PD logic has HUD come up if you do anything, so that's kind of hard to do. I'm off the throttle here, brake slightly more, and then on the throttle again. It doesn't really matter what order you do it in. You can sort of kind of slow down immediately and then kind of coast in. You can slow down right at the end if you're really good and know what you're doing after some practice, but that's if you're... I kind of just do it gradually because it's no slower than slowing down right at the end, and it's more stable. As long as you start slowing down midway, it doesn't really matter that much order, as long as you get there at about 70 or so. If you're in 70 miles an hour and then 5th gear, you're pretty much full throttle off. Again, it might slide a little bit, but you ain't going to spin out with traction control on 5. 5th gear, you're not going to slide much, though. Again, 4th gear, I'm not even really going to slow that. Just don't be in 4th gear, most likely than not. If you make it, I've made it all of one time in 4th gear. Good for you. But I was in 5th gear, and I'm 3rd in the Americas region, taking that with 5th gear, so it's not going to hurt you much. But anyway, that's the lap. About the only difference for a qualifying lap is don't go out, stay on the inside just for least track traveled as possible. That would probably gain me about a hundredth. No big deal in a race, maybe a big deal in qualifying, just depends on who you're with. But anyway, that's the lap. I hope y'all learned something from this, enjoyed it. I'll saw the lap in full speed here, and then, well, that's the video. I hope y'all learned something from this. Karts are dangerous. Don't be mad if you're not anywhere like close to this to begin with. I wasn't at all close to this to begin with. I started today running like a 49.8. After 5 laps of that, like a 49.2. After 10 laps, I think I actually spun on my 10th lap, so I was like at a 50.7 or something. After 30 minutes, I was at a 48.4. I took about 2 hours in total with this, and my best is a 47.7. Practice makes perfect, definitely in karts, but you can get it. Just remember they're sliding and inconsistent, so just practice. Because even the best will mess up in these. These are probably the most accident-prone vehicles in the game because there's no formula cars. Don't be too bad if you mess up because it happens to literally everyone. So I hope you all enjoyed this, learned something from it. As always, keep on practicing, and as always, yeehaw.